Quick question. Can you name a perfume brand that used to be huge, that you genuinely haven't seen anywhere in years? Most people can't, and that's actually kind of the point of this video. Perfume brands don't die the way companies usually die. There's no bankruptcy headline, no news story, no big dramatic ending. They just quietly stop showing up. 1 year the bottle is on the shelf. A few years later, it's gone, and almost nobody notices, because the shelf just fills back up with something new. I went digging into 5 real luxury perfume houses that fit this exact pattern. Some of them you've definitely heard of. One of them might genuinely shock you, because you probably think the brand is still alive right now. I'm putting this story first, not last, because honestly, it's the wildest one, and I don't want to bury it at the bottom. In 1930, a French designer named Jean Patou released a perfume called Joy. It used an enormous amount of jasmine and rose in every single bottle, and for decades it was marketed as the most expensive perfume in the world. That wasn't just a marketing slogan either. In the year 2000, the public voted on the greatest fragrance of the entire 20th century. Joy won. Not just placed well, it actually beat Chanel No. 5, arguably the most famous perfume ever made. Now, here's where it gets messy. In 2018, the massive luxury group LVMH bought the Jean Patou brand. At almost the exact same time, Dior, another brand owned by LVMH, launched a brand new perfume and gave it the same name, Joy. 2 completely different perfumes, same company, same name, released around the same moment. By roughly 2020, the entire original Jean Patou fragrance catalog, including the real Joy, stopped being made. Gone. Discontinued. I want you to really sit with that for a second, because this wasn't a case of a perfume failing or falling out of style. This was the actual, official, publicly voted greatest fragrance of an entire century, and it got shelved so a bigger company could reuse 4 letters on something else. Original bottles of Joy now sell for hundreds of dollars among collectors who understand what they're actually holding. House 2. Crown Perfumery. This next one is a lot less dramatic on the surface, but it's honestly the most direct example of one person just decided to end it. Crown Perfumery was a real respected English perfume house, known for solid, classic fragrances that had built up a loyal following over the years, including a scent called Crown Imperial. It wasn't some obscure startup. It had genuine history behind it. At some point, the house was acquired by Clive Christian, a perfumer who runs his own separate ultra-luxury brand under his own name. Instead of keeping Crown Perfumery running alongside his own label, he simply closed it down, so he could put all of his focus into building up his own name instead. No slow fade, no gradual discontinuation, just a decision, and then the house was gone. I think this one is actually a really important example to include because it shows that not every perfume house dies from bad sales or bad luck. Sometimes a house dies because whoever buys it simply doesn't want it to keep existing. House 3. Prince Machiavelli. Now, before anyone rushes to the comments to tell me you can still buy this at the drugstore for around $12, I know. Stay with me, because that's actually the whole tragedy of this one. George Machiavelli was a real Georgian prince and diplomat who fled his home country after it was invaded in the early 1920s. He landed in America and, together with his wife, started blending perfume by hand for wealthy, high society clients. They poured it into small, ornate, crown-shaped bottles, inspired by his own family's crest. And for a while, those little crowns sat proudly on some of the most elegant vanity tables in the country. In 1936, his widow sold the entire company for $250,000. From there, it changed hands again and again, eventually landing inside a huge consumer goods conglomerate that saw the crown-shaped bottle and the catchy jingle as a manufacturing opportunity, and basically nothing more. What started as handmade perfume for genuine European royalty slowly turned into something you grab near the checkout line without thinking twice. So the brand technically survived. Sure, you really can still buy a bottle. But the thing that actually made it special, a real prince personally blending scents for real high society, has been gone for decades. What's left is a name and a bottle shape, wearing the memory of something it no longer is. House 4. Lucien Lelong. This one honestly bothers me the most out of all 5 because of how unfair the ending feels. Picture this. One single man personally trained and employed Christian Dior, Pierre Balmain, and Hubert de Givenchy, 3 names that basically define the entire history of modern fashion and fragrance. You'd assume a man with that kind of influence would have a house that's still thriving today. Instead, almost nobody outside serious collectors remembers his name at all. That man was Lucien Lelong. In the 1920s and 30s, his couture house was one of the biggest in Paris. During World War II, he personally negotiated with German occupiers to stop them from relocating the entire Paris fashion industry to Berlin, a move credited with protecting thousands of jobs. On top of running one of the most important fashion houses in the world, he also released more than 40 different perfumes over the years, several of which, especially one called Indiscret, are still actively hunted by collectors decades later. He shut down his couture house in 1948 when his health failed, and he passed away 10 years after that. His fragrance business technically kept going in some reduced form after his death, but only as a small licensed operation, putting out modern, reformulated versions under his old name. It's a borrowed signature now, not the actual living house he built. The students he personally trained went on to build fashion empires worth billions, brands you can walk into at any airport on Earth. The man who made all of that possible watched his own life's work quietly dissolve while he was still alive to see it happen.
House 5, Balenciaga's Lost Decade.
I'm saving this one for last because, unlike the other 4, it doesn't end in a total loss. It's a strange in-between story, and I think that actually makes it more interesting. Balenciaga's very first perfume, called Le Dix, launched back in 1947, and for decades after that, the house kept releasing new fragrances alongside its fashion lines. Then, starting around 2012, something quietly changed. Nearly every classic Balenciaga perfume got pulled from production, and instead of selling wearable fragrances, the brand started experimenting with strange, abstract scent installations at their runway shows. Things like the smell of asphalt or antiseptic, piped into the venue rather than bottled and sold. For more than a decade, if you actually wanted to buy a real Balenciaga perfume, you simply couldn't. One of the most recognizable fashion houses on the planet had, for all practical purposes, no functioning perfume business at all, and most casual shoppers never even noticed it had happened, because nothing about it was ever loudly announced. Here's the twist, though. It took the brand's own internal archivists 15 years just to track down a single surviving bottle of that original 1947 Le Dix, so they could study it closely enough to rebuild it. And in September 2025, Balenciaga actually did relaunch its fragrance line, bringing back a faithful recreation of that original scent alongside 9 brand new perfumes. So this house didn't stay dead. But for well over 10 years, it genuinely was gone. And that's exactly the kind of quiet, unannounced death this whole video is about. The pattern across all 5. Step back and look at these 5 stories side by side, and a pattern starts to show up. None of these deaths came with an announcement. Nobody sent out a press release saying, "This legendary perfume is ending." A brand just quietly stopped appearing on shelves, or got folded into a bigger company and slowly reformulated into something unrecognizable, or had its name recycled onto a completely different product. The industry doesn't pause to mark these moments. It just restocks the counter with whatever's newest, and counts on most people not noticing, or not remembering, or simply moving on. That's really the whole reason I wanted to make this video. Not just to tell you 5 interesting stories for the sake of it, but to show you that size and fame don't protect a perfume house from disappearing. A house can die because of a corporate decision made in a boardroom. It can die because a founder's health fails with nobody to properly carry it forward. It can die because a name gets recycled onto something else entirely for profit. And every once in a while, like Balenciaga, a house can actually come back, years later, once enough time has passed, and enough people still remember and want it. So that's 5 real luxury perfume houses, and 5 completely different ways a legendary name can quietly disappear while technically still existing somewhere on a shelf. Which one hit you the hardest? For me, it's still Joy. The idea that the actual greatest fragrance of an entire century could get shelved over a marketing decision is something I keep coming back to. Let me know which one surprised you most in the comments. If this opened your eyes a little, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you in the next video.